Environmental impacts are solved potentially by investments. Let's find out more about that in this show. Clean hydrogen is touted to be the game changer of the future. It gives a promise of delivering good, paying, clean energy jobs and realizing a net zero economy by 2050, and that's what we need for the Vision 2040 that we're living through right now. What is in it for Oman, and how will our spending power save the planet? This is The Hydrogen Story, where we talk about the biggest energy transition in history. Welcome to the show. Now, with me is Ms. Monica Trench, the Business Development Director of BP Oman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
We previously spoke on a lot of aspects. If you haven't seen, please check out episode 1, part 1. Not episode 1, please check out part 1. We are here in part 2 with investments and further challenges. Now, my first question is, what are the best areas of investments for early adopters? Please explain what early adopters are and what areas of the world are the early adopters focusing on?
Sure. So why we say early adopters is because I guess the hydrogen economy is still relatively new. We're still creating new markets for hydrogen adoption. So I would say early adopters really is about the first movers who are willing to step into this space, even though now there is still some risks to take and there's still more learning to be done.
Yeah.
And I would say they can be early adopters in many parts of the hydrogen economy. Early adopters in terms of production, early adopters in terms of hydrogen usage, and everything in between. So some examples, as you know, in Europe, there's been a lot of hydrogen production demonstration scale projects.
Specifically?
So specifically, I would say
Germany.
In Germany, in the Netherlands, some early hydrogen projects, maybe they're not huge scale in terms of compared to what some of the announcements has been made in Oman, right? Because in Oman, there has been some gigawatt scale projects announced. Whereas in Europe, they are starting up, in terms of megawatts and kind of double digits.
Does that make Oman an extremely early adopter that is actually leading the way?
Well, I think Oman is probably an early adopter in terms of the large-scale hydrogen ambition and the integration of onshore renewables into green hydrogen production. But I would say, I think Europe is a good example for early adopter. I think there were some statistics done by the Hydrogen Council that said by May 2022, there were about 680 large-scale hydrogen project proposal put forward, which represent $240 billion worth of investments, and 30% of that is concentrated in Europe. And why is that? Because they have favorable policies and regulatory incentives, and also very clear targets. So I would say, in terms of questions, where are the investments in terms of early adoption? I would say it can happen in both the production side as well as on the usage side, because without a clear sight of hydrogen demand on the usage side, it's really hard for the investors on the supply side to make the investment decision.
So if 30% is in Europe, where's the rest of the 70% and where's Oman in that? What does Oman want to be in that? If it's a massive gigawatt talking big hydrogen dreams and aspiration and ambitions.
Yeah, so I think at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral press conference on Sunday, they have released the hydrogen targets by 2050 and the $1 billion worth of investment that will be required, I believe was $140 billion worth of investment that will be required. So I think that is very ambitious, but this is good. This is, sending a clear signal to the market about the scale of hydrogen ambition Oman has. So I think Oman has great potential of being a key player. What
makes it have that great potential? Its location. Everyone talks about that. So with this potential, what are the barriers and challenges to have towards the early adoption, towards investments, and towards actually producing?
Yeah, so I would say there may be kind of three reasons for Oman to having a potential. I would say one is superior renewable resources, the solar energy and the wind energy to be able to produce a lot of renewable power. And also the second is that Oman is in a geographically is in a good location that is able to access two large demand markets of hydrogen. So Europe on the west, and then you have China, Japan, and
Almost
South
2.4
Korea
billion.
on the east. Exactly. So that makes Oman a great place to become a hydrogen production hub and for export into those countries.
And the third?
And then I will say the third is that you have the kind of the infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I mean kind of the broader sense of infrastructure. So Oman has a very young population that can potentially be trained and have with the right education and skills to really power, sorry about the pun, to really power the green hydrogen economy. And there are existing ports and other facilities and really to create a nurturing environment to let this happen.
So what about knowledge transfer? How do we get that? Will people be competing with Oman, or will we all be assisting with each other? And how can we focus to make us get as the best kind of knowledge transfer and technologies be built within us here to be able to be that hub?
Yeah.
We cannot buy it in. We have to, it would be nice if we outsource it out.
Yeah, that's a good question. But maybe I will reframe knowledge transfer with knowledge development.
Okay.
Because I think Oman could be the place where you develop new innovation and incubate technology. I think with the scale of hydrogen targets and ambition that Oman has, I think it's got great potential to attract manufacturing into Oman and to attract the supply chain into Oman that can create a lot of opportunities and new innovation, etc.
Okay. So I also asked what are the barriers and challenges. You mentioned why Oman is good. So what would be the challenges be? What can we face? What can we also face them?
Yeah. So I think some of the challenges are not so dissimilar to the challenges that exist also in Europe and other countries. That include, I think, because the market is still early, we still need a favorable incentives and regulatory support to kick off the hydrogen economy. This is still in its early days. Hydrogen production is still relatively expensive compared to the fuel that the end consumers have to substitute it with. So to make the economics work, we really have to be able to drive down the cost of hydrogen. And then really to be able to drive down, you really need to create this early market to start learning by doing, and then and to create innovation.
I think I came up with another word in my head, hydronomics.
Hydronomics, I like it.
So where's the money at? If it's going to take a while and it's too expensive, and as far as I know, investors run away from stuff like this. Where's the money? Is it coming in right now? Is it really worth it?
So that's a very good question. I think the reason why, even though we know at the moment the economics are challenging in terms of the usage of hydrogen or the hydrogen cost being high, but investors are still interested, or we're still interested in explore this area, is because from a decarbonization point of view, we really see a potential in hydrogen. And
it's just a potential.
Well, it's not just a potential, but I think we can see a line of sight on how we can drive down cost curve and using economies of scale.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, you mentioned it early on, it's also the urge towards climate change fixing, or helping to adjust or be beneficial towards, or what's the word I'm looking for? Reduce climate change and be supportive towards it. I think a lot of people, it's that CSR value in the potential.
Yeah, I think so. And then really, I think if we want to be able to decarbonize and get to net zero, and hydrogen will have to be part of the solution and can play a critical role in that. And so that's why I think it's
got a double end to it that makes it worth the value to actually invest in it.
Yeah.
Okay. As an early adopter, how is BP handling all of this globally and locally? And could you bring knowledge transfer and knowledge development into the topic?
Sure. So BP's strategy in clean hydrogen is that we're trying to capture 10% of the global clean hydrogen market in our core markets. So what does that mean? What are some of the core markets? We're developing hydrogen projects in the UK, in Europe, in some of the key markets also.
Part of this 270 billion that is spent by Europe, I presume.
Yeah, and also some of the key markets that we're also developing is US, Australia or ASPAC, because Asia is also a key demand market, and in the Middle East. And Oman really is a key part of that story. So for Oman, we have a huge ambition and wanted to develop gigawatt scale projects in Oman that integrates renewable power and green hydrogen to target both decarbonization of local industries as well as to export the green hydrogen molecules into Europe and Asia. So
you called it green hydrogen molecules. You brought in a new term. Could you please explain that? I mean, is it the same as the energy carrier? You're calling it hydrogen molecules. Okay, all right. Using them interchangeably and stuff like this that confuses us. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. And there's a lot of lingo in this industry. Yeah. And sometimes maybe when I say green hydrogen molecule, and some people say derivatives because this is another complication.
Vector too.
Exactly, clean hydrogen vector. What does that mean is that if we want to be able to internationally trade and transport hydrogen in long distances over the sea to countries in Europe and to Asia, we had to find a way to transport this effectively. Because hydrogen molecule, as you probably know from the periodic table from school, is one of the lightest molecules. So it basically, for the same energy content, it takes up a lot more space in gas form compared to, say, natural gas. So how do you make it more compact so you can so it doesn't take up so much space when you had to transport it? This is one of the key challenges.
Make it more efficient and scalable.
Yeah. And also
so that's a challenge.
How do you make it more energy dense in a way so that it takes up less space when you transport it?
And gives out more for the weight that it's giving. So I understand what's BP going to do with Oman in this hydrogen story, and where can Oman focus on with all these areas that you're mentioning that can actually revolutionize this hydrogen economy?
Yeah. So I see maybe 2-3 key areas. So one is the hydrogen production side, hydrogen supply, right? So which is, the production of renewable power, the production of green hydrogen.
I might have to stop you there because I just realized we need to go to the break.
Okay.
So we'll be back in a few minutes, but I'd like to remind you that this episode is in support of the Green Hydrogen Summit that is on December the 5th and 7th at the OCEC. So make sure we see you there. And on the flip side, we'll continue with the answers.
We play, you listen.
You talk, we listen.
You got something to say? We want to hear it.
95.4 in Muscat.
And 91 in Salalah.
Music, news, views, and everything in between.
TFM.
TFM.
Let's talk.
Welcome back. This episode is in support of the Green Hydrogen Summit, and I would like to correct myself. It's on December the 5th to the 7th, 2022 at the OCEC. My guest for this show is Ms. Monica Trench, the Business Development Director of BP Oman, actually. Welcome to the show. And we were talking energetically about Oman, BP, the hydrogen revolution, and what are we going to do? And early adoption. So you were on point number 1.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we're talking about where Oman can focus, or where Oman can play in this hydrogen story. I think
in the best way possible with the investments is getting.
Yeah, exactly. So I think one really important part is the hydrogen supply, because Oman really has got great renewable resources to play a part and be competitive, has its advantage globally on the production side. I think second is that I think some of the industries in Oman can also decarbonize by using hydrogen. So for example, in the steel manufacturing, in aluminium manufacturing.
All the free zones, yes.
Exactly. So all of these industrial processes can also adopt hydrogen to substitute its current source of energy, which may be natural gas or other forms of energy. And I will say the third is around technology and innovation. I think there is a great opportunity to attract technology, new technologies to coming into Oman, equipment manufacturing to come into Oman to support the hydrogen economy. So I think there is a great potential for Oman. I think it's
even the supply chain. I'm thinking transportation, the pipe. I think I read something on LinkedIn with OQ trying to figure out what to do with the pipelines and how to modify them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so plenty of areas that we can do. How does BP and Oman work together then?
So BP I think globally we value partnerships because we understand that for hydrogen, economy, it's early stages, and to really make things happen, we we can't do everything alone. We have to work with others. So, we're very happy to be in country and working with other companies that to build large projects and help to facilitate the building of infrastructure that connects the supply chain.
With Oman and BP's future long relationship and partnership, what can we see?
So BP really values partnership or partnerships because we believe in the early stages hydrogen development. BP can't do everything alone. BP needs partners, and BP would like to work with partners. Some of the examples are we have partners in Europe and in the US and in Australia in developing some of the early stage projects.
So we learn a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. We learn from partners, and we hope that we also bring value to our partners. And we very much want to do the same thing in Oman. So we're looking forward to partnership opportunities.
I'm not hearing anything about off-takers and the end users. I'm hearing people producing hydrogen. Are they any off-takers out there, and will it be the same players like BP and Shell and Chevron, or will we see new players come into the field?
Sure, that's a very good question. So I think the off-takers can be the players that you have mentioned.
Can you give me another word for off-takers that people
I would
can
say
understand?
maybe the end users of hydrogen. Maybe
Okay.
this is better to relate to or easier to relate to. So who are the potential end users of hydrogen? I would say maybe there are kind of three key areas. I would say one is around long distance transportation, right? So for example, for marine, we really see potential of hydrogen being a fuel or hydrogen, a derivative of hydrogen being a fuel for marine transportation, hydrogen used in road transportation. We see a role in hydrogen for steel making, substituting coal and natural gas. We also see hydrogen playing a role in high temperature heat applications for some industrial processes, as well as hydrogen as a feedstock, which is an existing use of hydrogen today.
Okay. With early adoption, and you mentioned blue and green, and what other color?
Green hydrogen.
And green hydrogen currently right now. So
gray hydrogen is what we use today, and green and blue hydrogens are the low carbon hydrogens that can replace gray hydrogen.
Is that where the early adoption is, that transition to green, or is it an adoption completely into the hydrogen technology?
I think it's both. I think because you have a captive market with the gray hydrogen users today, so refineries or fertilizer companies, they're currently using gray hydrogen as a feedstock. I think that's a great place to start in terms of replacing the gray hydrogen they use today with the low carbon hydrogen to start decarbonizing. I think that's a great place to start. But there are also some industrial companies that are not using any hydrogen at the moment that can start using hydrogen to replace natural gas or diesel or coal.
Do they need to modify, or can they just get it and then exchange what it is that they used before? Do they need modification?
They do. So that is part of the equation. So for example, for steel manufacturing, they do need to change the manufacturing equipment and process to be able to use hydrogen instead of using coal and natural gas. Another example may be for transportation. So if for long distance vehicles to use hydrogen, they have to have a different engine. So it's no longer the diesel engine. They will have a fuel cell that is taking in hydrogen and is essentially an electric vehicle, or a fuel cell electric vehicle, but it's using hydrogen as a fuel rather than electricity as a fuel. So it's a complete different engine drive of the vehicle. It may change how the cabin is designed.
Sure.
I'm not an expert on
I see many areas. If I was an inventor, I can come in and there's me trying to make my income within the economy. I noticed that you mentioned a lot of things about long distance, heavy duty equipment. What's happened to cars and the stuff at home, or a generator at home, or can it work like that, or has it got to be big things, ships and trucks and planes?
That is an interesting question. Let me try to break it down a little bit.
Okay.
I think in everyday homes we can potentially substitute part of the natural gas with hydrogen, but it does require a bit of an infrastructure upgrade. So for example, that means mixing the natural gas with hydrogen into your natural gas pipeline that feeds into people's homes. And, so that is, potentially be large scale and potentially has some challenges, but I think that certainly has been talked about in countries, in Europe, for example, and in Australia as potential way of adopting hydrogen kind of in residential settings.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be industrial scale, but I would say hydrogen probably at the moment, some people will argue, is best to decarbonize in industrial processes. Let's take vehicles as an example. For a passenger vehicle that people drive normally on the roads, I think it's probably more energy efficient to electrify than to use hydrogen.
I heard that, which I could not understand. I mean, if we're getting into the hydrogen, then that means there's a long way for us to get into where it's worth it for the citizen to be actually to spend cheaper and be happy on what they're actually protecting the environment. Because with all these fuel cars out there guzzling and shooting out, then we are not really helping out with this climate change. So I thought there might be a focus on doing that. With colors, just really briefly, could you explain green, gray, and blue? And green.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. So gray hydrogen is the hydrogen we use today, which essentially is produced from fossil fuel, and it emits carbon dioxide. So it does still emit greenhouse gases. So that's
two-way.
Gray
One way
hydrogen.
destroying the environment and shooting out destroying the environment. Okay.
And blue hydrogen is basically the same process of creating gray hydrogen, but instead of emitting the CO2, it captures the CO2 and store it.
Interesting.
So this is called blue hydrogen. So it's still using a fossil fuel, but it doesn't emit carbon dioxide because it captures the carbon dioxide in the production process.
And there's many ways to capture carbon dioxide out there.
Yeah,
okay,
there are different technologies of
That's
capturing
another
the
technology a
CO2.
citizen can get into, try and figure out how to make money.
Exactly.
Economy.
And then green hydrogen production is a complete different process. So it is using renewable power in this equipment called electrolyzer, which essentially using power to split the water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. So there is no fossil fuel. There's no use of fossil fuel in that process at all, and then there's no CO2 emission.
It's absolute
in that.
clean renewables, getting that, and that's why they call it green, because it's actually helping with us. Great. Now, with my earlier question, when I was asking about the off-takers of hydrogen, I asked about, are they going to be still the same players? Because it's a big money game. So can new players come into the fields?
Yeah, of course. So other users of hydrogen can be, the off-takers or what we rephrase as the users of hydrogen, right? So industrial companies like steel manufacturing companies can be the users of hydrogen. Marine companies like shipping companies who today are buying a lot of fuel oil to power the ships and can potentially in the future be the customers and buying or offtake hydrogen and to power the ships.
So if Oman is going to be providing a lot of hydrogen with this 140 billion that it's investing, it can be the next Aramco?
Yeah, I think there's a huge potential for Oman to be a large hydrogen production hub.
That's what hub and being a new player and taking over the players. That's what we're looking at. Okay. I remember at one point during this meeting, you said to phrase a pun and you used power. So I could see some joke elements to you.
Yeah.
Do you have any hydrogen jokes?
I do. I'm glad you asked. Okay, let's see. What do you get when you're trying to buy water at IKEA?
What?
A can of hydrogen and a can of oxygen. Do you get it? Because when you combine it, it's
H2O.
H2O.
Well, it's a joke, people. Some of you get it, some of you don't. But it's a light-hearted way to finish this show. Thank you very much, Ms. Monica Trench, the Business Development Director of BP Oman. It's a pleasure having you here with your insightful answers. And you actually were patient enough with me to be able to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
I appreciate it. We're going to have Ms. Monica Trench at the Green Hydrogen Summit. So if you've got questions for her, please head over there. 5th to 7th of December at the OCEC. Till then, my name is Fahmi Ma'awali, and let's wait and see who is at our next episode. Take care.